Welcome to the 102nd Airhacks TV, and let's start with the topics. And now the new tradition of the show is to look 100 episodes back to the second episode, and so let's take a look at the topics or questions back then. Okay, so the second episode from Roman Ataman. It was 8 years ago, April, and he asked me, deploying jars with embedded containers instead of wars is quite popular. Is this possible? Does it make sense with Java EE? Interesting, right? Right now, I would say Quarkus and Helidon have just the option of using jars, but wars are not dead yet. So if you have Payara or Whitefly, you can still go with wars, but you can use for regular Jakarta EE applications also jars. So up-to-date questions. How to structure the UI? This was a comment. Let's see whether the link still is working. And PHP developer entity control boundary. Very much so. So you can do this in the backend this way. Interestingly, if you go to BCE design on my GitHub account, I use this exactly the same structure to structure web components with JavaScript, so boundary control entities. So after 8 years, you can also do this with JavaScript. So then there are some problems with Java 8 and lambdas. As I remember, the problem was the compilation. So if you use lambdas, there was a problem with dependency injection. This is long gone. Archelion versus Mockito, interesting one, because what I use a lot in current project is Quarkus test, so which is similar to Archelion. So I get dependency injection during testing, but not everywhere. Only if I have to. I still prefer using standard JUnit 5 tests. Meanwhile, and the JUnit 5 tests are faster and is like Pojo testing. And Mockito you can also use to mock out dependencies. I don't use Mockito very often, or I don't use mocks very often, because with all the serverless movement and cloud, the code got even simpler. So you really don't have often to mock out external dependencies. Okay, but I would say I don't use Archelion at all, and Mockito in few cases. So how you can propagate a backend exception, for example, optimistic log exception to the front end JSF or JavaFX. So this is a solved problem right now because we have REST, and what you will do, you will convert this to 400 or Okay. Interesting. So there is a problem with the database. So the database is not standardized, and the question is, would you use JPA for it? I would say absolutely. So maybe it's interesting what I really answered back then, but you can still even generate from the non-normalized database JPA entities and misuse JPA as a data mapping layer, just right. So parallelize and multiplier, or how to write in single file Java environment. No idea what is this about. So Java Beans. It says, okay, in the email I got a question back then, 8 years ago, whether we should still use the getters and setters and default constructor Java Beans pattern. I would say finally, after 8 years, I would say instead of using Java Beans, I use really often Java records. And what I also do a lot, I use Java records inside a class. So maybe I should write a short post about that. So I declare a Java record near of the method and just use it as return value. It's very convenient, very nice way to expose data. And sometimes even I use Java records inside a method. So you can define Java record inside a method. Let's say a pair of like key value. So you can use it, but of course you cannot use it outside. Okay, how do you handle 2PC with protocol adapters? So this is, the maybe the longest running questions on Airhacks TV, because if you have multiple processes, you cannot use two-phase commit. It is also true, for Lambdas, serverless, Kubernetes, or whatever. There's always the same problem. If you have a BCE, I have a message-driven bean. How would it be classified? So what a message-driven bean is like a command pattern, very similar to Lambda, by the way. And my Lambdas are in the boundary package, and the message-driven bean is also in the boundary package. Maybe someone from what would be nice if someone from you would rewatch the 100 episodes old show and see whether actually my answers do match. Lazy fields with Java, JSF, and FX. Of course, remote lazily is problematic. This is from Roman Ataman. So this one is interesting. What is the best practice to run a scheduled event on only one node in a EE cluster? So why it's interesting? Because what we have to do right now, we use Event Bridge, AWS Event Bridge, to have cron jobs, which fires an event which is consumed by Lambda, and Lambda calls HTTP, initiates an HTTP call to a Fargate cluster and behind the load balancer. So what happens then is that the Lambda, you get one event per cluster, but we externalized the timers outside the application server. How to generate the message only once? Chicken and egg, always the problem. Generate once and only once is a problem. Even back to AWS Lambdas, because your AWS Lambda, if it's asynchronous, can also fire twice. It is not given that it will. This is an old problem. So what's interesting is, if you would read, the questions right now, you wouldn't even notice that they are 8 years old. Maybe you'll notice stateless session beans a little bit used a little bit less right now. So this is the time machine section of the show. Hopefully you enjoyed. See what chat says. Okay. So hello to Luis Galas, friend of the show. He attended the EHEX multiple times. Hello to you. And Lenny, of course, huge fan of Lombok. So in Lenny's case, everything is a Lombok. And he listens to the show. He says, hello from Sunny Lake, Tahoe. I must say, listens. Something wrong here, right? So you should listen to EHEX FM. This is EHEX TV. So you had actually watched the show, not listened to the show. Okay. Then what else? First time live. Chimps from Brazil. So there's Tiago Lino. And there is also Pavel Lilka, and jumping from EHEX 38 to 102. Very good. And also from everyone is from Brazil, except Lenny from Lake Tahoe. But Lake Tahoe, there is no internet, so he only listens to the show, but at least live. Okay, cool. Let's take a look at the newest questions. So, and the first one is from Mr. Orlovsky. Not only Orlovsky, Mr. Orlovsky is also Java profi. So Alexander Orlovsky, Java profi. He knows Java, C#, JavaScript, Python, and Dart. So, and he asked me, I would like to hear adaptation story of Jakarta in production. What currently the challenge? I would say nothing. So the good story is, if you have a Jakarta EE environment, it is backwards compatible. Actually, I'm using Jakarta EE for a long time, I don't know, a few years, and there are no changes to Java EE 8. So if you use the newest one, then you will have to adapt the packages, but this is just a minor change. And there are lots of Java 6 and Java 7 legacy projects, and there's the ADF is the Oracle JSF technology. And so what you do in typical legacy project, what is the roadmap for Jakarta EE upgrade? I would say, before I can answer this question, the real question is why you would like to upgrade to Jakarta EE. Because I would say the cheapest possible solution to such a problem would be, if you have Glassfish application, for instance, is to pay the Payara guys for support and then run your application, because it is a way cheaper to any migration story. So if you have to migrate, then usually for a business reason. And so what can happen is that you migrate, from Jakarta EE to, let's say, to Docker containers, or you have to migrate to Kubernetes, or you have to migrate to serverless. And then I would not migrate to Jakarta EE rather than to microprofile. Why? Because the chances are higher that your old Java EE system will run on Helidon, Quarkus, or Micronaut. So, but it's really the question of why you would like to migrate. So, on that note, something interesting happened, and I already mentioned this several times. And this is, wait a second, this is the conference here. And this is a great conference, JDD, Java Developer Day, I guess. And I'm the Jack Meister track, which is nice. And this takes place on October the 5th. But the cool story is, I was there in 2012. And back then, this is actually, it's really spot on Alexander's question. And in 2012, I said Java 6 is the future, and the future is now. This was the title of my session, and now we got clouds. And what I would like to do is actually, during the session, show you the old code I wrote 10 years ago, and present you some ideas how to migrate it to the newest cloud. So this is, I'm really looking forward to this because, it's an unusual session. Should be lots of fun. And at the same day, I will probably deliver in Silesia Java user group in Katowice another session with the title, I think something like, building kick-ass serverless Java applications when they accept the kick-ass in the title. When not, I will have to change the title. So this is, I will spend entire hour speaking about this. Okay, now, next one. So, Alexander, I think it's answered. No, Mr. Tiago asked me, no more NetBeans, why? Actually, I before even you asked the question, I wanted actually to do more with NetBeans. So why not? Because I did a lots of stuff with web components, unfortunately YAML from time to time, and I'm using Visual Studio Code more like an editor. Sometimes I open, 10 instances, back and forth, code -n dot, which Visual Studio Code is better. NetBeans is way better of handling Maven and refactoring than Visual Studio Code, and surprisingly, NetBeans is faster. But the main reason which annoyed me, I don't know why, the open source Apache NetBeans edition, I think command and space on Mac doesn't work. So, and this was my main shortcut. So this was the problem. Why this is just really a minor thing, but there is a problem with JDK or the bindings on Mac, whatever. It worked the entire time, but it didn't work. When was it? 2-3 years ago. But I actually would like to use NetBeans again. But right now my projects are too chaotic. I'm spending time all over the place, and of course, also I spend some time in the clouds. And for instance, Visual Studio Code has a nice plugin to see the CloudWatch logs, for instance, which comes out of the box. So that's why. And Tiago, it's great that you are watching the 30th episode. Maybe you are the big commenter of the show, because what you should do is to see whether I'm answering actually the questions exactly the same I did 10 years ago, whether my opinion remained the same, or maybe I changed my mind. It would be interesting. And no more Jakarta only dependence. You are right. And this is what I, for instance, don't like on Quarkus. From the dependency perspective, I prefer Helidon. So Helidon, I think, ships with 2 dependencies. I get the entire microprofile, so this is how it should be. Quarkus is more modular, and Quarkus they have the amount of extension is crazy in the Quarkus case. And this is why the Quarkus has to go with the dependency. But still, if you're using Payara, you get 1 dependency or 2. There's 1 Jakarta EE dependency and microprofile dependencies. But I see your point. And what I actually wanted to do is I wanted to create for a Quarkus a kind of facade extension which will pool all microprofile dependencies. So the idea would be to have 1 microprofile extension which aggregates all the other extensions. So similarly what OpenLiberty is doing. So it is not like a feature, it is a bug that the developer has to add that many dependencies. And for my projects, regardless where I'm working, for what company or what I'm doing, I always need JAX-RS, CDI, JSON-B, JSON-P, what else? Persistent JPA, not always, I would say. But this is the main, the main dependencies. And of course, health, metrics, microprofile health, and metrics, and microprofile config was already included. So I always have a set, of the dependencies. Basically, what I have is microprofile is basically this. So this is all the dependencies. REST client I use a lot. Metrics, JSON-B, JAX-RS, JSON-B, fault tolerance depends. So if it's a Lambda environment, for instance, I don't use metrics. And JSON Web Token, it depends, right? So, okay, Tiago, perfect. And I have twice the time machine, which is interesting. You see, 12 days ago. Okay, now, Mr. Little Wink, 88. I think, Little Wink, you were born in the 88, I assume, right? So, I've written some custom JavaX annotations to automatically produce HTTP 400 BAT requests responsive to my JAX-RS application. So this looks like a regular custom annotation. And this annotation is the constraint validation, and it has 2 points to date pattern validator, which is this one, which looks good. And now, this is what I don't understand. Now I'm trying to pack this annotation in a jar and make it available as a dependency. So this is what I didn't try it even, but if you would like to externalize something, and I don't know what they're using, if you're using Quarkus, what you will have to do is, you will at least have to put Beans XML inside the jar, or the Yandex or Jandex index in order to be found. Maybe this is missing in your case. But I'm not sure whether you have to do this, because I never implemented the validation provider, actually. I'm pretty sure I did it already several times in a screencast, so especially with NetBeans. So if you go to NetBeans and you say, create a new constraint validator, NetBeans will automatically create for you the annotation and the constraint validator, which is really great, because except you have to be a little bit careful with the naming, because this is date pattern validator, and this is date. I wouldn't call it date. It would be like a date validation or something, right? So there could be a clash. So and I would try to do this, but what I usually do, I put both classes in the same code base. I don't even try to make it an external dependency. I try to avoid it. And I think I did the validation provider once for testing, but I never did it on the server. So I don't understand what you would like. What's the problem? The problem is, I think that it is not found, but try to put Beans XML, because it should be in the class path and it should work. So what I did this several times without any provider. I just put this both classes to the main project, and it always worked. So if you would like to externalize it, then it has to be found. If there's a Quarkus, think about the Yandex or Jandex. And I actually don't even know whether it is, I think with J, right? Jandex index, or the Beans XML. Let's see. Is it Quarkus Yandex or Jandex? I think Jandex, right? Yeah, Jandex. So it's not the Yandex, it's Jandex index. So you need the Beans XML or the Jandex index. So try with that. And if it's not Quarkus, then try to find, or I would try. I had no time, to try it out. That's the problem. Now, Mr. Abdel Muniam, or I think Mohammed is the first name. So Mohammed, I'm developing an app using Quarkus. And when I insert Java time here using JPA and Hibernate, I used to receive an error deserialized JSON. So it seems like you get the error not from JPA, you get the error from JSON-B, because JSON value. So what it means is, what you will need is a JSON-B serializer, a custom serializer. So you would need a way to serialize the year month into JSON. I think the converter here, hopefully it's a JPA attribute converter. So this converter, you need two serializers. You need a JPA serializer and you need a JSON serializer, and there are two different APIs. So you cannot implement one serializer for both. Actually, you could, right? Because what you could do is you can use the JSON-B serializer to serialize the year, month as a JSON and store it in a string column in a database, varchar column, and then use the same JSON, to send it back to the client. But I don't think this is what you like to do. I think what you like to do is to have a, I don't know which format, maybe a simple string in the database and a JSON from book, the entire book represented as JSON on the client. And then you will need to have two serializers, a JSON-B and JPA. So, oh, sorry, your first name is Abdel Muniam. So Abdel Muniam, sorry, not Mohammed. So this was the answer. And now Mr. Paulo Lisca. And he says, I'm trying to Quarkus Morai fault tolerance. And what I think what you try to do is you have transactional retry, and what you hope is if something fails, the entire method, which is annotated with retryable transaction, is invoked again, and the transaction is restarted. And it seems like it doesn't work. So I can imagine why it doesn't work. And the problem is this method is directly invoked by the runtime, and the runtime ignores the transactional because transactional requires to have a proxy. So, but what I would do in your case is to do the following. I think it is similar pattern to not timeout, to timed or schedule or timer pattern. This is what I wanted to say, timer pattern. So what I would do in your case is, let's say the boundary. Actually, this is the boundary, right? So the boundary is a class which is annotated with retry. And what you could do is you can have another control or boundary which implements a method, and this method is transactional. So if you retry something, then you call the other methods which restarts the transaction. So this could be nicer and easier, and this is very similar pattern to schedules. What I did back then, my timers never had any business logic inside. They were like decorators. They wrapped and they invoked business logic method. So this would be a similar approach. Another question from Mr. Paraliska. Did you ever use HTTP to server push? Yes. Is there any easy way to use it without any low-level code? I mean, servlets are really easy. I wrote even, I think, Adam Bean HTTP2 and JSF, for instance, Prime Faces use it out of the box. So I implemented this with NetBeans, of course, in, how long was it? I don't like to click it right now, but it was not very long. Let's see. 3 minutes. So it should be simple. So take a look at this. And but HTTP push is not maybe what you assume it is. So what you usually can do with HTTP2 is you can pre-populate the cache. It's not like WebSocket, right? So what we use HTTP2 for is a client requested a file, and we were able to proactively push, multiple files back to the cache of the client. So everything was pre-populated. So yeah, so we used it this way, but I don't even think you can use HTTP2 as a WebSocket for communication. So now, Mr. Pablo Ruiz, and I think he's also a long friend of the show, he asked me, in the case of a GET call in REST service with a parameter query, so the point is he has a GET with query parameter and request gets too long. What to do with it? So what I would do in your case, in case of using query parameters, I would use the header. And you can put whatever like in the header. So I would use this. I wouldn't change to post because GET has specific meaning. And the query parameters, think about this as like optional parameters to a method. So, and you can use header instead, and this would be a similar approach. Actually, my current projects, we can switch between query and header parameters for specific stuff, and it doesn't make any difference. I think we are done, which is incredible. So we covered 2 shows in 25 minutes. So, okay, so let's take maybe we forgot something. Oh, of course. you should, of course, join immediately, register to the serverless workshops in December. And both are, what I try to do is, in the first one is to think about stuff like, persistent queues and topics like Kafka, so event stores, serverless in the clouds. And the other one is we have Java in the cloud. Which persistence options do we have, and how cheap or expensive they are, how convenient to use, and how they match Java. So these are 2 workshops. Then announcement. So I was invited to Java user group Salzburg in Austria. This is an in-person event only, and Java and clouds fast, efficient, and productive. So I would like to show you why Java is great in the clouds. So then there were, of course, a couple of podcasts, and have lots of fun with Nikolai about Java 19. Then Mr. Omni, this is the Ken Vogel, about Java at universities, and also Java 18, and I think, Daniel Lipp, friend of the show, also interesting talk with him. He's, I think, right now CTO of an insurance company, and we know each other for a long time, so it was actually a nice chat. Okay, I think this is already covered. This is covered. Let's see, maybe there's last minute question. No. And this was the conference, and let's take a look at the chat. And Pavel is from Slovakia. Very good. And Fernando asked me, I recently made a contribution to Quarkus, and it was approved. So kudos to you. Now dev mode is able to detect and live reload changes of external projects packaged in a jar. Perfect, Fernando. Congratulations to you. So you get a t-shirt, I think, right? From the Quarkus guys. No need to restart the dev mode process after external changes. The only requirement is to configure this property Quarkus class loading reloadable artifacts. So Fernando, thank you a lot for your contribution. Great community, right? So if you have any questions, specific questions to low-level Quarkus, Fernando is the guy to ask. Okay, I think we are done. I would say enjoy the evening. Great questions, and see you in autumn, in October. And of course, conferences. So there's a Vue conference I will joining, not too much, because this year is crazy, lots of projects. And everything I'm doing is Java 17 and microprofile, and a little bit Java EE or Jakarta EE or J2E or whatever you call it. So, the same stuff, differently named. So, thank you. See you next year. See you next month. Bye.